Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposal I'll have a few words and turn to Vice President Roy and then to Dean Herrmann. But this request is one made with significant thought by the University of Alaska Fairbanks and represents an institutional decision to address the importance of quality and timeliness of course offerings in the School of Management. Dean Mark Herrmann will go through all of the rationale and what led School of Management to bring this forward, and it has the full support of UAF administration. And Vice President Roy has looked at other institutions as well, and we'll start with his comments about the issue of differential tuition generally, and then go specifically to School of Management.
Thank you, Chancellor Roy. Madam Chair, Regents, President Gamble, I want to set the stage and frame the issue with some brief comments. We already have de facto differential tuition, albeit we don't use the nomenclature per se. For example, non-resident tuition versus resident tuition, graduate tuition versus undergraduate tuition. So this practice already exists. This is a trend at public universities. Almost 50% of public research universities have already implemented differential tuition. Nationally, business and engineering programs have higher tuition, as on average, their graduates command higher salaries and job opportunities. They also have higher cost of instruction due to faculty salaries. These pricing differential schemes reflect what the market is willing to pay. On the other hand, it can be argued that it is bad for price-sensitive students from lower-income families. However, this can be counterbalanced or mitigated with financial aid. Recently, the Florida Task Force on Higher Education has interestingly recommended that differential tuition be used to favor students majoring in certain strategic areas. In other words, differential tuition is not avant-garde or new, as it has been around. Finally, I invite your attention to quote-unquote the intent language of the Senate Finance Budget Subcommittee, which says that if we increase our income or the university receipts, we can ask for additional unrestricted general funds. The long-term goal being 125%. This tells me that we need to dip our toes into new things to enhance revenues. We have to be entrepreneurial because the velocity of change in higher education landscape is accelerated. And the biggest risk is the risk of not taking one. So if it does not work out, we can always reverse the decision. It is a complex and profound issue, and it behooves this august body for a conversation. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Herrmann.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for listening to our proposal today. Really appreciate it. This is a proposal for differential tuition has been discussed a lot in School of Management, and it's been discussed with the student to at great lengths. I made just 6 presentations over the last 3 weeks to student groups. And I do have a couple of letters here from students. We have our 2 oldest student groups, the Associated Students of Business and the Great Alaska Accounting People. They're the oldest and largest business student organizations. They represent business and accounting. And I have a letter from all their student officers here signing a letter of support for the differential tuition, and also members of the Student Advisory Council. This is a council I meet with on a regular basis. So I have that I could give to you. We also went into our largest classroom, organizational behavior classroom, that's 2 weeks ago now. And I presented the differential tuition to 59 students. This is a junior senior level class that represents many of our upper division students. And so I made a presentation during one class period, and then the next class period I wasn't there, but the teacher led a debate on differential tuition. You actually have the class break up into groups of 6, and they rolled as board of regents, and they debated the proposal back and forth, and then took a vote afterwards. And the vote in our case was 70% in favor of differential tuition. So we've tried to touch I also have a letter on that too, signed by the faculty member. So we've tried to touch as many students as we could. In this school management, we're a very close-knit group. Students share a lot of responsibility for helping shape curriculum and other different things in the school. And so we have lots of discussions among ourselves. This differential tuition is also supported by a business advisory council. We've had for many years now. The faculty, staff, and I appreciate its support also of statewide and UAF. With that, I have a presentation. I'd like to just very quickly go over some background information on the School of Management. It'll give you an indication of who we are and why we're getting support for this, and then talk to you why we're bringing this particular proposal forward. So, the history of the School of Management, the first business degree came in 1924, but it wasn't until 1975 that the School of Management was actually formed. And one of our biggest achievements has been getting accreditation from the Association to Advanced Collegiate Schools of Business. We did that in 1988. And in fact, this Sunday will be our 25th anniversary of that success. And it's something we're very proud of. We have the normal business programs: accounting, business administration, economics. We also have one which is rather new in emergency management. And we have an MBA, a Master's of Science degree in Resource and Applied Economics. We share a doctorate degree in Natural Resources and Sustainability with the School of Natural Resource and Ag Science. And we have other programs such as Early Leadership Center, and this last year we took in the ROTC. What we stress as a school is quality. This is something our students are really proud of, and it's something we're proud of too. So I want to give you 3 indications of quality. The first is that our AACSB accreditation is a dual accreditation. It's both the School of Management is accredited, and we have specialized accounting accreditation. So we're the only school in Alaska with this, and it's been achieved by just 178 universities in the world. That's just about 1.4% of universities worldwide. The second is a couple of external indicators. We have a CPA exam pass rate that we follow. It's the highest in Alaska. So our accountants are on a CPA track, getting to take the 4 parts of the CPA exam. Our pass rate is actually higher than the national average, which is really remarkable given that we're one of the smallest. We used to be the smallest accounting program with separate AACSB accreditation. And we're up against many schools that have master's degrees in accountancy. So our students do very well, our accounting students do very well when they go out on the CPA exam. The third thing is most business schools, their senior students will take from the Educational Testing Service that's called the ETS Business Exam. And we have records of that since 2005. We've been tracking it. And since 2005, our school, the School of Management at UAF, is ranked at the 91st percentile of over 700 universities that have taken that. And just for interest, I have some separate disciplines there. You can see how we rank all the way from economics down to legal. So our students have taken this twice a year for the last 9 years. The MBA program ranks, School of Management for MBA programs ranks at the 77th percentile among schools across the nation. So we think this is a very good achievement, and it's one that all of us are very proud of. We firmly believe that much of the education for our students should be done outside the classroom. And so when I became dean, I sort of challenged the school that I thought 50% of the education should be done outside the classroom. That's not only with students interacting with each other, but it's also through the many opportunities we give them. So we have a student investment fund that has a $600,000 endowment. This is one of the oldest student investment funds in the United States. It started in 1981. And it's been read up, it's been on CNN, Fortune magazine. It's pretty famous nationwide. And so our students buy and sell stocks in there. They treat each other as board investors, and they're showing up very early every morning to work on this. And many of these students have gone out and done terrific jobs. A real estate investment fund, we just started that this year, trading REIT mutual funds. We have $140,000 now. And I'm not going to go down through the rest of the stuff, but things like Arctic Innovation Competition, the Business Leader of the Year, Alaska Business Week, our students are working on all of these things outside of class. many times not getting credit for that, but they're getting great experience. And before they go out onto the job market, they have given public speeches, they have been resume writing, mock interviews, they're ready to go, and we get really good feedback from the employers to interview our students. So this is the type of school we are. It's a very close-knit. We work with each other. Students are active participants in everything we do. Yes?
What's flip courses and clickers?
Okay, yeah, so this is new technology that we're just getting into. A flipped course is where the lectures are done ahead of time. They're put on the computers. The students come in, and the students at home are going through the lectures. And then when they come into class, instead of going through the lectures, you're answering questions, you're doing projects. The clickers is a way to make sure the students have actually gone through the material. So they come into class, and for the first 10 minutes, you give them a quiz. It records their attendance, it records how well they've done their reading and so forth like that. So I just threw that on there. It's another part of experiential active learning. If you look at blended type courses right now, they're assessing the highest outcomes for student learning. So we're trying to get a lot of that new technology into our classes. This is actually a really neat thing. I've seen it work in action before. Class time is then not used just to listen to a lecture, it's used to actually work through problems. And to continue the very active role we have with our students, we have many terrific student organizations. And these aren't just student organizations, which we have up here, and students attenders and speakers. They are active participants. Our students are active participants in their own education. We have the Associated Students of Business. That's one of the groups that we have the signatures from. They're our old student organization. They do all sorts of things. Great Alaska Accounting People is the other one. It's very famous. It's called GAP. We have Native Alaska Business Leaders, ROTC, Student Advisory Council. They're the group of all the student leaders that meet with me on a periodic basis to talk about school issues. Students in Free Enterprise, if you look at all those trophies down there, our Student Free Enterprise group has won like 3 or 4 regional competitions against some very big schools. It's done very well nationally. And then we have the other student organizations down there. So all these organizations are open not only to business students, but also we have a lot of engineering students, biology students. They're open across campus. They are very active, and we do a lot of things with them. One of the things I've tried hard to do, and I'm pleased with how it's worked, is we have all of our student organizations now on private funding. None of it comes from general funds or student tuition. So it's done from raising money from our really generous corporate sponsors and also individuals. Okay, this will give you an indication of the growth we've had. 2007, we had 419 students beginning of fall, and in 2012, 719. So we've had a 72% increase in students. This is at a much higher rate than the rest of the university, although the rest of the university has also grown through this period. Our biggest growth was University Management, which is a newly created program, went from 0 students, of course, up to 90. And that's received really good recognition nationwide. All of our programs have grown both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And what this does to us, it puts a lot of pressure on us to offer more classes at more times to get all these students through, and also for advising. I'll talk about some of those challenges a bit later. But we've had a good deal of growth, and we're very pleased about that. So now I sort of want to get into the heart of why we're bringing this proposal forward. So I'll slow down just a little bit. First of all, I want to tell you that our budget, the school management budget, is 95% salaries and 5% for other operating. Other operating is everything else. Faculty, travel, professional development, staples, paper, everything like that. Everything else is into faculty and staff salaries. And I will tell you that as far as staff goes, if you look at the Fund 1 and tuition number, our staff salaries is the lowest percent of any school or college on campus. So I feel like we're operating extremely efficiently. What is very high are the faculty salaries, and these faculty salaries are market driven. So if you look at this slide right here, this comes from the Oklahoma State Faculty Salary Survey that everybody uses. It's actually about a year old here, but it is the premier benchmarking salary survey for business schools, and these are actually public. These salaries right here are for public institutions. They're about 20% higher for private institutions. So the numbers you're looking at right now are the average salary if you went out and hired somebody with a PhD, a brand new PhD in that field. So if we went out to hire somebody in finance, it would cost us, on average, for somebody who's brand new out of school, $170,000. And then you can tack on about 35% benefits onto that. So it's extremely expensive. Accounting is listed at $137,000, although I don't think there's any way we could get an accounting PhD into school management for $137,000. That's actually, that seems low. So I went through many of the major fields at universities, and you can see all the top ones there are all business related. The next group of high salaries are engineering. And then below that comes science, math, and then liberal arts at the bottom. So there's a huge disparity in salaries that faculty make at universities. And that certainly affects our ability to offer education when we're getting the same price as far as tuition goes.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair, Dean, did you provide, I can't remember, you went through a lot of the national stuff, but did you provide your own, the cost for your own department, and is that provided for us? I can't remember seeing that.
I have not provided individual salary levels for our own.
Oh, okay,
So
that'd be a good thing. Thank you.
yes, we could get that very easily. We'd just be going back to my computer and sending it right now. Okay. Our students cost more to educate. Our students are also high demand. This comes from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. This is the list everybody uses to look at demand for students coming right out of college. So up here I have the top undergraduate degrees. And you can see they're dominated by business, computer, and engineering. So business is the first two, then computer, then engineering, business, computer and engineering, business, and business. So our students are in very high demand when we get out. And that's the same thing we're seeing. This is nationwide, but we're seeing the same thing in Alaska. We haven't really been affected at all by the recession in terms of our students getting really good jobs. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics focusing on Alaska, 22 sectors, the top one in salary level is management and occupations, which is one of two that we target. The other for our students, the other being business and finance operations. Our students are going out, they're getting good jobs. I'll just give you a few examples. We tracked our accounting students over the last 10 years. They're at right about 95% full-time employment, only 1% unemployment. The other ones are continuing on the school or part-time employment. Our new accounting majors, when they come out, they're making a beginning salary between about $50,000 and $55,000, and after about 3 years, they're usually in the triple digits. And I can give you lots of other evidence too. Our MBAs are going. I think that probably the four firms that are most successful with right now are KPMG, Kunda, BP, and Alaska. Their students really are employed all over the place. Most of them staying within the state, some of them going out. So very, very high demand. And if you going back to accounting, we almost have 100% placement by the end of their junior year. And they're sticking around for their senior year, and they're going on at that point for their 150 hours. So the job market's been very good for us. Our budget has not been very good to us. So if you look at the very top line up there, you can see at the start of the year, we were projecting deficits for the end of this year and for every year thereafter. We had very good current budget projections, and then we project 3 years out. So we have pretty good projections out to FY16. FY17 is a bit more of an estimate. So we're projecting debts, and this is a running debt. This isn't a new debt each year, so it's carrying forward the debt from the previous year. So if you go to the FY16, we're about $1.1 million in the cumulative debt at that point, if we had kept like we were going. So our executive team, made up by the leaders in school of management, we met before the year started, and we cut everything we could possibly cut. And so we made 40% cuts to our non-salary budget, and then we improved those numbers quite a bit. But it was just sort of kicking the can down the road. The debt starts, and by FY16, we're still looking at about $800,000. It was 40% cut to our non-salary budget. That included cuts to travel, supplies, a couple student programs, which we don't have yet, our private funding, but we will switch those over hopefully next year. We've also, over the last few years, because of the budget pressures, have been replacing tenure track positions with instructors. So those last salaries you saw were for tenure track positions. We replace them with a lot of instructors. Now, AECSB, our accrediting body, allows us to do this up to about 50%. So 50% of our classes can be taught by academically qualified PhD faculty, about 50% by by practitioners. And that's at the point we're at. We really can't cut these any more than we have. We're doing all this at the same time that our student numbers have gone up by 70%. And then we're also starting to increase use of teaching assistants in classroom, which we have not done up to this point.
President Gamble.
Dean Herrmann, what's the academic level of the instructors in general? What do you have available?
They're very high. They all have master's degrees and usually have several years of experience. And so they're terrific. Our instructors are very good. So if you're going to be academically qualified for AECSB, you need a PhD and be doing research. And if you're going to be professionally qualified for AECSB, you would need a master's degree and lots of years of work experience. And our accrediting body likes about a 50% mix of those two types of faculty.
Rita Fisher.
Question for Chancellor Rogers. Is this 10% of your student body?
It's about
12? Is that what you're?
12. It'd be about 12%, I believe.
You look at a full-time equivalent head count, or
Whatever metric you want to use. Just looking, it looks like about this represents about 10% of your student body.
Yeah, I think that was something like this.
in terms of majors, actually with more taking classes than the majors. So just the majors at 632 would be about 10% of the UAF Fairbanks campus, not of UAF as a whole, but of UAF Fairbanks campus.
Okay, so here's some reasons for the budget crisis, and it has not been mismanagement. We have been, leaders in looking at our budget, and we are very, very efficient. Our people, our staff, we work long hours, and we do it so on very tight budgets. So the very last thing we cut on our budgets or anything for students, and we've gone to great lengths and to put all the student activities which are outside of the classroom on private funding. We've been very successful doing that. But here's what we face. So our budget's made up of about 75% from the legislature, 25% of our budget comes in from tuitions. Our budget itself is 95% salaries. Every year we have salary increases. These salary increases are mandated to us, and 50% of them are funded by the legislature. So we have to fund 50% of our salary increases, and that is a lot of money for us. And there's nowhere for that to come, except for, at this point, there's nowhere for it to come except for salaries or running debts. If we have faculty that go for a promotion or tenure, we have to cover 100% of those increases. We've been getting annual pullbacks from the University of Alaska Fairbanks over the last 4 to 5 years, and those have ranged between 1% to 4.5%. Those are permanent pullbacks to our budget. We just don't have any way left at this point to fund it. We are going to be facing a decreased tuition rate down to 2% next year. And this has all happened while we've had about a 70% increase in majors. With these extra students, and also through the SBI, and something that we're firmly behind, there is a big demand for us to get students out, to retain them, to graduate them, to increase the number of students, and decrease the time to graduation. Our students, if they can decrease the time to graduation, is so beneficial to them in the long run. So what we want to do, and what we need to do with all these students, and we're very much constrained on capacity due to class sizes at UAF, is that we want to move to a 12-month school, not by extending everybody's contract from 9 to 12 months, but offering classes here and there in the summertime, and also offering more of our classes online. We're not looking to go online and deliver our entire BBA program, but we are looking to get all of our classes online so our students have the choice. And I believe it was last meeting or a couple meetings before, you saw some of our student athletes who were here talking about online classes. What we need each year is about 8 to 10% increase in our tuition just to stay even. And that's how the last 4 or 5 years we were able to pay these salary increases and all this pullback. We were getting them through these increases in tuition. If you look at the demographics now for high school students in Fairbanks, it's leveling off. And we don't expect actually to keep these increases, and we'll probably be flat as far as students go, or slightly decreasing. So we're projecting level tuition in the next few years. At level tuition, we will lose about the equivalent of a faculty member each and every year. So this comes down to the proposal we have. We are proposing a 25% differential tuition for upper division and graduate school management courses. Again, this proposal, which you've received, is the ones I've given to our students. They have a proposal. They also haven't indeed helped me on some of this the presentation today. It would be 10% for the first year, 15% for the second year. Originally, we'd asked for FY14 for the first year, but I think at this point it would be FY15 for the first year, FY16 for the second year. We would take up to 20% of that tuition surcharge and put it into needs-based scholarships. Many universities that have done differential tuition across the nation have done this, and that would cover for students who aren't having all their financial aid paid for, or tuition paid for by financial aid, or having difficulties with the extra portion of tuition. We would help them out with that. We're hoping if our student numbers stay the same, we're expecting a pretty inelastic demand for our programs, that the market would tell, but it would raise about $380,000. And that would take us at least through FY16, I believe, the budget. The average increase to the student over their 4 years would be, on average, $3,000. That comes to about $375 a semester for 4 years. And the percentage, and I'll show you where these numbers come from, but the percentage increase for a 4-year student to their total education, if they were paying the whole thing, would be between 3 and 4%. What this will allow us to do is allow us to increase and continue the experiential and active learning that we're now doing, that we feel is so important to distinguish our programs and from any of the others, to obtain the type of the outside assessment, the test scores that we've been obtaining, to continue high quality education, to increase retention, all in SDI, increase graduation rates, faster time to graduation, which is very, very important for business students, and just to sustain ourselves as a school at this point. There's a national trend for differential tuition. It's most common among business, engineering, and nursing. When I wrote this proposal, the first draft in November, 35 states had business and engineering differential tuition. It might be up to 36 or 37 right now. 50%, Dr. Roy mentioned, 50% of flagship campuses have differential tuition, with business being the most common. For example, all Big Ten schools have it. 8 of the 13 UAF peer schools have it. 13 of 21 peer UA schools have it. And the business school differentials have ranged between 2 to 59%, with a mean of 14%. The next slide, slide 14, shows the national trend for differential tuition for academic programs among universities. This goes up to 2010. I believe this is a study of Yale. The next slide looks at the cost of attending UAF, and so I've taken these figures out of the UAF catalog for the current year. So the top set of figures shows that if you're on campus, it shows how much you'd be paying between in-state tuition and fees, books and supplies, room and board, transportation, and other expenses. So the increase that our students would have would be just in the junior and senior level, and it would be just for tuition, and it would become about a 20.8% increase in tuition and fees. The reason it's less than 25% is because there's no increase in fees. In fact, the school management has rather low fees. And so for the junior and senior level a year, if you look at the entire cost of education, it would go up about 8% as a junior and 8% for a senior. Because it would not increase at all as freshmen and sophomores, the total increase would be about 4% total. And then in terms of being off campus, it's a slightly lower percent because they have a higher room and board. There's actually a typo there in the transportation that should be $2,000 under both current and differential tuition, but it doesn't affect the total columns there. So if you're living off campus, your increase as a junior and senior would be about 6.4% both of those years, and be about 3.2% for your total of your 4 years. That's if you're paying all those fees yourself. Financial aid covers it, then it would be different. And of course, one of the big questions is how does this affect our students?
I'd like to ask about whether the Alaska Scholars Program and some of these other programs that are designed to cover tuition, or at least the tuition when you enter your freshman year, would this tuition differential be covered by those scholarship programs, the state scholarship programs?
In response to the UA Scholars Program, does not provide full tuition. It did at the time that it was created, but it has not grown, and so it would continue to cover the amount that it covers today. And Alaska Performance is also a fixed dollar amount, so neither of them rise. The total financial need, as calculated on the FAFSA, however, would increase by that amount, which could change eligibility for some scholarship programs.
Thank you.
Of your numbers on the previous slide, how many, do you consider off-campus, do you consider those your e-learners? How many e-learners do you have?
No. Virtually all of our e-learners are our students, are on-campus students. So 30% of our classes are taught online. Virtually every single one of those students is living in Fairbanks. The reason I won't say this about everybody is because, well, you guys, maybe one or two odd ones, is our emergency management degree is actually offered in 19 different states. So that's a little bit different. Probably half those students, you heard about the fire program yesterday, the majority of our students actually come from our fire program to emergency management to continue on to the 4-year degree. So we don't really have, except for a handful of emergency management students, e-learners that are off campus.
So you don't have the situation where many Alaskans throughout Alaska are taking either your bachelor's or your MBA?
No, they're almost all on campus, yes. Some of them, of course, we're trying to make it easier for them if they're in the military and they leave, if they're stationed overseas or whatever, to finish our degrees, but, well over 90% of our students start on campus.
So your pool, when you talk about your high school graduation and the fact that it may level out or even go down a little bit, that is really your pool. I mean,
Yes.
your pool is Fairbanks.
Yes, I would say 90% is Fairbanks, or 85%. A little bit from Massachusetts and Anchorage, we go back and forth, but virtually everything from Fairbanks. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up question. So with your MBA students, are most of them traditional or non-traditional students? Meaning, do they have outside employment and live off campus?
Yes, non-traditional by you mean are they working students? Virtually all of them are non-traditional. Yeah, they're almost all in full-time jobs and they're working at this at night. So,
And they're attending school at night or when
Yes.
they can.
Our whole MBA program is a nighttime program.
Oh, it's a nighttime, oh, okay.
Yes. Okay, so let's see. So we are very concerned with how this could affect students, and that's number one question. What we're trying to do is be responsible for our school. We're not asking for legislative handouts. We're trying to solve our problems ourselves. We've had the students in, and they're working with us on this. Not all of them agree, but we do have a majority of support. One thing we've done for our students is we have very actively tried to increase scholarships, period, for our students. So here's a few figures. July 1st, 2010, we had $250,000 in endowments for student scholarships. Just 2.5 years later, we're up to almost $500,000 in endowment for student scholarships. We're hoping in 2 or 3 years we get that up to $1 million. Each of these scholarships that would go to many of our different students. For instance, last year in fundraising, we raised $330,000 in private donations, about $120,000 went to student scholarships. So we've been very active in increasing, at a base that was almost zero about 8 years ago, increasing support to our students. Again, part of this proposal, 20%, up to 20% of the proposal that would be put aside if there's issues of needs-based scholarships. Across the nation, however, 97% of universities have found no detrimental effect to low-income students from these proposals. And across the nation, about 83% of students either support or neutral to differential tuition after it is explained to them. In the long run, differential tuition is better for the students. In the long run, it will save them money. It'll save them money because the faster we can get them out in the job market, you're looking at opportunity costs of if you're delayed a year in education, not only paying you extra education, but losing $50,000, $60,000 in employment. That is a lot of money. So in conclusion, business degrees cost more to produce. There's no question about it. Our faculty are higher paid, and that's because if you're trying to induce somebody to go on and get a doctorate degree in finance or accounting, they have to give up 5 or 6 years of very high incomes to do that. Even the few that go on to get doctorate degrees in accounting, finance, and some of the other fields, such as marketing, then they're highly sought after by private businesses. And if it's not private businesses, they're sought after by private institutions or other universities. So their salaries, the market salaries, are very high. Business students are in high demand. We have a very good placement rate with our students, and we work very hard in getting them good jobs. And they're paid very well versus most other fields. Our school is not sustainable in the current fiscal realities. We are very efficient. We pay, as we should, because we're a business school, a lot of attention to what's going on with our budget. We have done everything we could to cut costs and keep student support the same by switching to private money. But we are not sustainable under the pullbacks, under the labor cost increases. And we are already down for accreditation. We're on the danger point of losing too many tenure-track faculty members with doctorate degrees. Differential tuition will increase the students' overall college expense by about 3 to 4% over a 4-year period. It is going to allow us to continue our quality education, which is well documented. Differential tuition, it benefits the students. It benefits the students and is supported by the majority of the students. That's the end of my presentation.
President Gamble.
Herrmann, do you have any idea what the average business school student debt load is upon graduation for a baccalaureate degree? For your school of management?
Oh, for our school debt load?
Our students.
You know, we don't say it. It's not that high. We have trouble getting tracking how much financial aid our students get because those figures, especially from the federal level, are not available to us. But it's certainly not that high. If you look at well, let me give you an example. The AACSB schools, we have comparable schools to us, signed by AACSB and negotiated by us, and we have aspirant schools. Now these schools, so there's 9 of them, we are by far the lowest in tuition. And that's just the regular tuition, it's not even counting the ones that have the differential tuition. So we're well below that. If you look at the WICHE schools too, we're well below the average, like around 30% below the average of the WICHE schools tuition. So if you look at business schools across the United States, our tuition is way below average, and it's well below many of the business schools that have the differential tuition. Our students also have very good support, and so I don't know the exact answer to the debt load, and I'm sure it varies widely. But certainly versus other business schools, it's extremely low.
Regent Fisher.
Interesting discussion, glad we started off, and information gathering for me to find out what we'll end up. But you made a point on the accreditation that you needed so many, and I think, was that the doctor, the tenured doctor? What was the description of that?
Yes, so roughly half our classes must be taught by they are academically qualified. Those are ones with doctorate degrees who are research active.
So, and then you said that you're losing those. So, what's your numbers for PhD? That category that you need for accreditation.
So right now, out of about 24 faculty members, we have essentially 15 of them have doctorate degrees and research active. Now, we're at 50-50 because the instructors we have with master's degrees, they have a higher teaching load because they're not doing their research. So that puts us right there at about 50-50.
So what I'm trying to determine is it because you're adding new non-doctoral candidates in that teach, or because you're actually losing, are you really losing folks? And if so, what's the numbers that you're really losing?
No, it's because So we've had a 70% increase in enrollment, and so we've had to have a lot more people in the classroom, and we've hired all instructors for that. So when I say replacing faculty, what I mean is normally we would hire a lot of those faculty members at the tenure PhD level, but now we're using instructors instead. And no, we're not losing based out of
Okay, so I heard in the description that you were using them because of the salary. And then just quick numbers, and again, just starting this morning, Chancellor Rogers. So what I heard is we need $380K to kind of, that's what we're planning to make ends meet. I mean, that's for the budget. I mean, that's less than 0.1% of your budget, less than 0.2% of the Fairbanks campus budget, and less than 0.3% of state appropriations for the Fairbanks campus. So my question is, out of $380K, isn't there another way to make that up through your budget process?
And the answer to that is, yes, we could cut elsewhere, and then you'd have a different dean asking for, we've been told clearly in the current fiscal environment to look for other ways to raise revenues. And I think that the School of Management has, perhaps ahead of other schools, really reflected on what are the issues with the structural cost model of a high-cost school. And I think the fact that we have the level of student support is they're recognizing that for a $3,000 investment, they're going to get out faster. If I got to offer you a $3,000 investment that would pay off with $25,000 of extra income in a couple of years, you'd probably take that investment. I think that's one of the reasons so many of the students have done. The answer is yes, we could cut elsewhere. We are going to be cutting elsewhere because the issue is similar for every one of our schools, colleges, and institutes with the costs, with essentially none of the fixed cost increases covered in the state budget, and only 50% of pay covered in the state budget. We already have to reduce, everyone has to be cutting in order to stay even. Should we cut others further for this school? That's a judgment call that you can tell us we have to make.
President Gamble?
To put a finer point on it, when we talked in the past about program review, we've always talked just about one side of program review. And that's the side that if a program's not adding value and it's costing more than we're getting out of it, we need to look at reducing the program or cutting the program. This is actually a way to look at a program that's adding value, that's got high demand, and in the program review process, it seems logical to say that in that case, those are the programs we want to find the ability to resource, and if the market will bear it, this is the argument that's being made for differential tuition. It's the other half of program review, really. Not everybody fits in that category, as we would expect, but this is the first time it's really been presented to us in the debate about program review.
And just a quick follow-up, quiet for a while. And I haven't worked this out in the percent, the percent of the budget that, so it's 10% of the students, or they get 10% of the budget, that question. Let's leave it at that. I mean, it's an intriguing question. And Dr. Roy made some great points that we want to incentive. If this is something the state wants, we want to charge more for it. When you charge more for something, you usually get less of it. And I'll just repeat that. Great conversation.
Regents Powers, Heckman, Wickersham, O'Neill, Friday.
So, an observation and two questions. The observation is the clear sense of ownership and